There is a dog somewhere near you right now, maybe in the same room, maybe asleep at your feet, maybe waiting by the door, and you have probably thought of that animal as a pet, as something your species domesticated, as a creature that exists in your world because humans, at some point, decided to bring wolves in from the cold and turn them into something softer, something tamer, something useful. That story is so familiar it feels like fact, but it is almost certainly wrong, because the evidence now points to something far stranger, something that changes the entire relationship between your species and theirs. What if the wolves came to us? What if they ran the whole operation? What if the most successful domestication event in the history of life on Earth was not something humans did to wolves, but something wolves did to humans? The answer is far stranger than you think. For most of human history, the dominant theory was simple. Ancient humans captured wolf pups, raised them, bred the aggressive ones out, kept the useful ones, and over thousands of years produced the domestic dog, humans as architects, wolves as raw material. It is a tidy story. It puts your species in control, and almost every piece of modern evidence suggests it did not happen that way. The first problem is timing. Dogs diverged from wolves somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago. This is not the Neolithic. This is not the agricultural revolution. This is deep in the Paleolithic, when your ancestors were nomadic hunter-gatherers with no permanent settlements, no surplus food, no obvious reason to take on the caloric burden of feeding a large predator. The standard domestication story requires humans who could plan ahead, control breeding across generations, and maintain consistent relationships with dangerous animals over thousands of years. Nomadic hunter-gatherers living in small bands, moving constantly, surviving at the edge of caloric capacity, were almost certainly not doing that. Researcher Brian Hare at Duke University proposed what he calls the self-domestication hypothesis. His argument is this: the wolves that started the process toward dogs were not captured, they were self-selected. Around the edges of human camps where refuse and discarded food accumulated, certain wolves began to linger. Not the boldest wolves, not the most aggressive, the least fearful ones. The ones whose stress response was slightly lower, whose flight distance from humans was slightly shorter, whose tolerance for proximity was just a little higher than average. Those wolves got more food with less effort, they outcompeted the wolves who stayed away, and they passed those traits to their offspring. Humans did not select these wolves. The environment humans created selected them. The wolves did the rest themselves. But here is where it gets truly strange. Because what came next was not just a wolf becoming more docile, it was a wolf becoming something entirely new. Biologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard University has studied the process of self-domestication across multiple species and identified what he calls the domestication syndrome, a cluster of traits that appear together whenever an animal self-selects for reduced aggression and reduced fear response. Floppy ears, curly tails, patches of white fur, shortened snouts, juvenile features retained into adulthood, reduced brain size in specific regions, and one more thing: a dramatically enhanced ability to read social cues from other species. That last trait is the one that changed everything. Researcher Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology spent years comparing the social cognition of wolves, chimpanzees, and domestic dogs. His findings were striking. Dogs are uniquely, extraordinarily good at reading human social cues, better than chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, better than wolves, their closest genetic relatives. A dog can follow a human pointing gesture, understand human gaze direction, and interpret human emotional expression in ways that no other animal on Earth can match. This ability did not come from training. It did not come from thousands of years of humans teaching dogs to pay attention. It emerged from the selection process itself. The wolves that were best at reading human behavior got more food, raised more pups, and passed that ability forward. Generation by generation, the proto-dog brain was being reshaped not by human intention, but by human proximity. They were learning to read us, and we had no idea it was happening. Now consider what this animal brought to the partnership. Wolves hunt in coordinated groups across large territories. They track prey over vast distances using a sense of smell roughly 100,000 times more powerful than a human's. They can detect threats from directions and distances that a human cannot perceive. They communicate danger. They flush game. They guard the perimeter of a camp through the night. They extend the sensory reach of a human hunting band in every direction, across every sense, at all hours. For a nomadic hunter-gatherer living in a landscape full of predators and competing groups, this animal was not a pet. It was a force multiplier. It was the difference between going hungry and eating, between sleeping safely and being ambushed, between surviving winter and not. Paleoanthropologist Pat Shipman at Pennsylvania State University has argued that the alliance between early humans and proto-dogs may have been a decisive factor in one of the most significant events in human prehistory, the extinction of the Neanderthals. Modern humans and Neanderthals coexisted in Europe for thousands of years. Neanderthals were physically stronger, had larger brains, and had survived ice ages that should have been beyond human endurance. And then, around 40,000 years ago, they disappeared. Shipman argues that the timing is not a coincidence. That is exactly when the evidence for domesticated dogs first appears in the European fossil record. Modern humans with proto-dogs had a hunting and threat detection advantage so significant that it may have tipped the balance in a competition that had been running for tens of thousands of years. Your ancestors did not just tame wolves, they formed an alliance with a predator that helped them inherit the earth. And the wolves? They inherited something too. Today there are approximately 1 billion domestic dogs on the planet. They live on every continent. They are fed, sheltered, protected, and reproduced at a scale that no wild wolf population can approach. From a purely biological standpoint, the domestic dog is one of the most successful large mammals that has ever lived. The wolves that started edging toward human camps 40,000 years ago made a bet, and that bet paid off beyond anything evolution could have predicted. So the next time that animal looks up at you, really looks at you, holds your gaze in that particular way that no other animal does, reads your face with that uncanny precision, understand what you are actually seeing. You are seeing 40,000 years of coevolution. You are seeing the result of a process that neither species designed, that neither species fully controlled, that reshaped both of your ancestral lines in ways that are still running through you right now. The loyalty you feel toward that animal is not sentimental. It is ancient. It is written into your biology by the same process that wrote itself into theirs. They did not become part of your world. You became part of each other's. And somewhere deep in the part of your brain that still remembers what it felt like to sleep in the open, in the dark, with predators moving in the night, somewhere in there, you already knew that.